For the past 20 centuries, God has offered every married woman the privilege of transforming every moment she spends in her home, whether it be the humblest or the most pompous in town, into eternal crowns to be cast at the feet of Christ her Lord. In Titus 2:5 we find, "Be discreet, chaste, housewives, good, obedient to their own husbands, so that the word of God is not blasphemed." Since Paul wrote these words, every married Christian woman can redeem every moment she spent in the endless duties of the home in offerings of worship of obedience to God. Every dish she washed, every towel she folded, every diaper she changed, and every tiring day she spent with her family members, all offered in worship of God. He used the word housewife, a word designed by God as the role-specific ministry that pleases Him, is what He wants. Is what He wants for godly women who offer their lives to Him through the ministry in their homes. The verses in Titus chapter 2 were sent as a call to first century men and women to live an extraordinary and spiritual life in a very unspiritual culture. Unfortunately, in our society today, the motto is that women are liberated. Some movements proclaim the human experience through the family empowerment, the exaltation of women's rights, and the liberation of patriarchal patterns. Thus, nothing irritates modern women more than the image of a woman enslaved at home that this biblical passage seems to portray. And also in the church today, nothing seems more difficult than to convince wives that their main God-ordained ministry is to obey their husband, and the mothers that the primary calling is to disciple and nurture their children. God explains that the home is the special domain of a wife and mother, and should always be his highest priority. It's within the home that a woman can offer the best ways to express her love for her husband and children, obeying the Lord and following her plan, for God's plans are always the best. Paul is explaining that by God's design, a woman who is a wife and mother finds her greatest fulfillment in obeying this priority of God. A married woman who is a believer must make a conscious choice to obey the Lord and make it her life's priority to be her home. Marriage for a believer brings men and women into God-defined roles. Whether our culture agrees or not, whether it's easy or it's difficult, whether others obeys or not, God is looking for women who see their home as a priority for them. Wives must first focus on loving their husband with an emotional, intimate friendship. When God asks a Christian woman to focus on her God-ordained roles as a homemaker, He is asking them to join a ministry strategic to God's wonderful plan. A Christian woman must believe that she has been called by God to do the work of caring for the home, for the Lord Himself. She does this work for the Lord. It should be her focus and pleasure. Jesus declared His ministry focused when He said, "My food is to do the will of Him that sent me and accomplish His work." And on another occasion, "I have glorified you on earth, having accomplished the work you gave me to do." Think of the joy it can be to go through life doing exactly what God designed you to do. A Christian housewife must love the focused ministry God has given her to do. Perhaps this distinction in the Christian life is the most derided in our culture. In the feminist view, in the liberated, individualist, independent woman view. A Christian housewife sounds profoundly archaic. It's urgent to point out that although a married woman should be a housewife, the Word of God does not say that they were prevented from doing other things or having professional career. Proverbs 31:10-27 clearly shows that many facets of this wise woman's life, and among them were real estate investments and a small business. It also doesn't mean that the woman should do all the housework herself. As the God-ordained head of the house, the husband must truly lead by the example of Christ. Remember that Jesus did not come to be served, but to serve. So a godly husband will show the way with a servant's heart and will always honor his wife, helping her in any way he can. Paul never thought that women were any sort of second class to men because of this role responsibility. In fact, the Word of God clearly teaches specific gender roles in the home. Such a God-ordained gender-specific role, if attended to and pursued, prevents women from being second-rate to men. If she follows spirit with God's desire to run a home built around faith, love, and holiness, she will find her greatest blessing and complete God fulfillment, and she has the privilege of hearing children who are helpful, heartfelt servants to God. To repeat spiritually follow God's desire, trying against wrong postures imposed by religions which in a practical way do not encourage love in the home. Finally, any married woman who resists being a housewife in the Lord's mold works against this divine plan established by the God of the universe. Any married woman who wants to do God's will makes her home a priority. Any marriage and home where this priority is neglected is bound to be in serious trouble. No one can violate a specific directive from God without incurring the consequence mechanism of Galatians 6:7. The wife must love the ministry that God has given her. When she realizes that running the home is God's will, it's easy to love what God wants done. You must bear in mind and see that managing your home is what God believes is best. This is what Paul says in Romans 12:2. And do not be conformed to this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind, that you may prove what is that good and acceptable and perfect will of God. When God's grace helps us resist the pressure of culture and set our minds on His plan and will, we live God's best. God's best for a married woman is to run the home by pleasing the one who called her to this ministry. Think of the joy it can be go through life doing exactly what God designed you to do. This is what a Christian homemaker should expect. To love the ministry God has given her to do. And in her mind, she will echo Paul's words. And whatever you do, do it heartily, as to the Lord and not to men, knowing that from the Lord you will receive the reward of inheritance, for you to serve the Lord Christ.
Behind their smiles, a tiny little crocodile, waiting to do me. Beware of those only can speak so